So a recap of what I did before, IP addresses and the network addresses. Now, if I give you something like this, let's say 10.0.1.0. What's this? Is it IP address or network address?
IP address.
Okay, why? Is because you have something inside of it. So what about this? What's this? IP address or network address?
Network address.
Yes, it's network address because from the host IDs are all zeros. Now, okay, no, what I will do is that I have to wipe out everything here and come back again. Hold on, I'll be there. I'm coming. IP classes. So okay, so if you look at this, 110.0.0.0 is a network address, but 10.1 or say 10.10 10.10.0.0. This is an IP address. Even 10.10.10.0 is still an IP address. Why? Is because they are class A, and class A is saying it's only when host IDs are all zeros. When host ID are all zero, that is only when you now say that it is a network address. But here, the host IDs are not completely zero. Likewise, here, not completely zero. So this is when it is a network address. Then coming to class B, if I have 172, if I have 172.16.0.0, this is a network address. Whereas I have 2 zeros here, but it's an IP address. You see the difference in classes and their addresses. This is an IP. This is also an IP address. But here, we have 2 zeros here. It is a network address. 2 zeros here, it's an IP address. Because of difference in classes, here is class A. Class A is saying this. So class B, the IP address is 172.16.1.0. Sorry. This one is an IP address. Why? Is because the subnet ID, they are not completely zero. They are not completely zero. Then coming to this class C, 192.168.1.0. This is a network. This is a network address. Whereas 192.168.1.1 is an IP. Now look at the differences now. Here, this is a network address, but I have 2 zeros here. It's an IP address. I have 2 zeros here. It is a network address. You see the different in classes. Now, I have 1 0 here. It is an IP address. but I have 10 here. It is a network address. This is class C. This is class B. This is class A. So it's very important that you understand all these things, knowing when to see how to identify IP addresses and network addresses per class. So it's very important you get this. I don't know whether you've got understood this. And
Yes.
it's very important you get it. If you don't get it, you might be struggling with subnetting when we start subnetting. So, and also another thing I want to talk about is broadcast address. When you have all zeros in your network ID, it is network address. When you have all zeros, when you have all 255 in your network address, it is called broadcast address. Like this class A now, if I have 10.255.255.255, it is a broadcast address. Here, if I have 172.16.255.255, this is a broadcast address for B here. For this one is if I have 192.168.1.255. That's the for .255 is a broadcast address. This is a broadcast address. This is a broadcast address. This is a broadcast address. So when you have all 255 in your host ID, what does broadcast address do? You see, this is a network 192.168.18.0. If you give an IT person, hold on, please. If you tell IT person that that this network is this 192.168.18.0, the person will understand that the host can take 1.1. You can take 11, you can take 22, you can take any one. But just know that this is your gateway, and the gateway always take the first valid IP address or the last one. I'll talk about that one later on. The same thing goes for this. This is a network address. These are host IDs. So it's an IP addresses. So the gateway is supposed to take the first valid IP address of this. That is 5.1. Here is 18.1 or the last one. The last valid IP address is 254. So that is by the way. I'll still come back to this. So, okay. Now here, if they want to run a broadcast message in this, if they're using IP address to run a broadcast message, anybody that wants to send broadcast message to everybody, like this one wants to send to everybody, what is going to use is going to be what? 192.168.18.255. That's the broadcast IP address. No, broadcast address for this network. That's when the host ID is 255. The same thing for this one. Broadcast address for this one is 192.168.5.255. That's the broadcast address for that network. So when any of them wants to send a broadcast message, that's what it's going to use. That's what is going to use. Like this one is supposed to be 192.168.5.255. So any of them, when they want to send a broadcast message, that's what they're going to use to send broadcast message. Because they are using this class, what? C. So for other classes, they were going to use broadcast message accordingly. This one you use 255 and all of that and all of that. Now, look at this place now. In class A, I have 10.10.255.255. What is this? What kind of address is this? I'm asking us, everybody. So what kind of address is that?
It's IP address.
Yes, IP address.
An IP address.
Yes, because the whole host ID, they are not completely 255, and they are not completely all 0. So it is an IP address. Yes. Whereas here, it is a broadcast address. The same goes for this 172.16.1 or say .1.255. .1.255. This is an IP address.
Yes.
Why is because see the host ID. They are not completely 255 and they are not completely 0. But here, host ID is completely 255, so this is broadcast address. You see the variance in their respective classes and the addresses, the way they have been addressed. Okay, now. Book of Revelation, chapter 7, verses 16 and 17. Yes, sir. That we've understood. I want to believe that we've understood all of this, the IP address and the network address. Now, one more thing I want to talk about is let me bring this. If I have something like this, so if I have something like 192.168, this I have saved already. If I have 192.168.1.0, this is okay. This is a network. Sorry, please. Sorry, I want to get this out. Okay, so this is a network address. Or let me use what we have here, 18.0. 18.0 is a network address. So the valid IP addresses under this network are 18.1, 18.2, till, how would I even do this now? Till 255. So I can have .1, .2, .3, .4, .5 till 255. Of course, you know that this one is the broadcast address. And the first valid IP address is this. So most of the times we give it to our gateway. Gateway is this place I said before. The point on the router where network used to reach out to other networks. It can either be .1, 18.1 or 18.254. The first valid or the last valid IP address. That's what we use for our gateway. Okay. This man, no. So now for you have to cancel of this and set up afresh. Hold on, please. I need to cancel everything. Classes. Hold on, please.
Thank you, Daddy. Auntie Panama. I like this our song.
So hold on, please. I'm coming to. Hold on. Okay, back to where we were before. I've explained to you how we fill up IP addresses, meaning that if you have this, the varied number of IP addresses you can get is 254. That means if I have something like 192.168.1.0, so I have .1, .2 till 254. Then 255 is my broadcast. 255 is my broadcast. So the valid IP address run from here to there. You can use the first one as your gateway or the final one. So the number of hosts or the number of valid IP address I can get in each of the network address in class C is 254. That is 2 raised to the power 8 minus 2. The number of network is that. The number of hosts I can get in number of IP address I can get in class B is 2 raised to the power 16 minus 2. And A is this. You can do the calculation. Now, if I have class B, which is, for instance, I have 172.16.0.0, I can have the first IP address as 172.16.1.0, .2.0.3.0 till 255.0. 255.0. I'll start doing again 255.1.2.3 until I have 255.255. That's when I now have the very last one. So this, see the very first valid IP address is this. So 255.255 is the broadcast address. So when you start running from here till 255.254, you have this number of IP address per network. So that's very important. You get that. So I will just believe that I am done with the IP addresses. I've taught this thing before. We are just spending more time on this. We discussed this before, far earlier before. So coming to IP subnetting. IP subnetting. So I'm bringing up IP subnetting. Hold on. And I thought about I didn't bring it up. Let me just quickly do that. Quickly. Look at this place. We have private IP addresses. Oh. just don't want to do come in. Okay, so private IP addresses. These are IP addresses that all IP addresses are for sale, but what we have here is what you can use in your local LAN. As in, if you are setting up IP address, like normally, understand that they say that class Cs, you should use class Cs in a small enterprises. We are set up network in small enterprises. This one is for medium enterprises. This one is for large enterprises like ISP or multinationals. ISPs are multinational. This is what you use for that. This one, you can use this one for medium enterprises like NMPC. I know that spread around the nation. This one is for all companies, like small companies, small enterprise. Now, in all of this, when you are setting up your private network, your local LAN, this is what you should use. So if you get to any ISP, this is what they are going to be using as a network address in their local network. Or medium enterprise, this is what you can use. You can use 172.16.0 or 172.17.18 till 32. For small network, this is what you can use, obtainable, you can actually use. I'm just trying to summarize this. See what I mean by private. If you're going on internet, you need to buy a public IP. Anybody that needs to be accessed from internet need to buy a public IP address. So private IP addresses are the ones you can actually install in your local network. You see that under class A, the person is trying to use this. Under class C, you use this. You can use this. Any of these things in your private network. Now, if someone is trying to communicate to someone else and the destination network is private, router will never allow that to cross on internet. The only thing that router allow to cross to internet is if the destination IP address is public. If it is public. So any of this, anything outside of this is public IP address. And if you need a public IP address, you go and buy. Every other IP address is free. So you buy every other IP address that is public. This is a private IP address you can use within your network as this. So when you're setting up a network, if it is a ISP, you use 10 dots. If it's a medium enterprise, you can use any of the range. Small enterprise, use any of this. That's just what it is. So back to, we are going back to IP subnetting. And I have like, like less than about 7 minutes or thereabouts.
Please
Okay.
switch to the pre-IP screen.
To which screen? Can I say that again, please?
The free local IP.
Sorry, I'm coming. Let me check. Is this what you mean? Is it this page? So is it this one?
No, it's for class A, class B, and class
Is it
C.
this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So you want to ask a question?
No, I just want to take it down the information.
Okay.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, so we can go. So back to subnetting. And I have short time. Subnetting. I might not have so much time. I said before, subnetting is IP subnetting is creating smaller networks from a parent network by modifying the subnet mask. How do you modify subnet mask? By borrowing bits from the subnet mask. Borrowing bits from the subnet mask. Okay, look at this. Now, what I have taught us so far, I have 4 minutes, so we'll continue this class some other time when this 4 minutes is elapsed. So if this is my class A, sorry, class C, and the default is 24. 24 means that it is 255, 255. This is 8 plus 8 plus 8 is 24. That is why you can say /24. This is a prefix length. If that is this, say /24, someone will know that it's this. That's what you mean. If it's for class A, it is /8, which is 255.0.0. That is 255.0.0.0. If it's B, it is /16. That is 255 to 255 and all of that. So these are subnet masks, 255, 255, 255. See the subnet ID. See the host ID here. If I decide to borrow one, you see one that I borrowed, to add to what I have before, it is now 225. Because here is 8. Here is 8. Here is 8. 8 bits in total, 8 bits plus one more bit. So if I add 8 plus 8 plus 1, so I have 25. Under default, it was 24 before. The number of bits that identify the network is 24 under default. That is 255, 255, 255, 255. But now I decided to borrow 1 bit to add to it. It becomes 25. And when you do that, you're going to have 2 networks. If you borrow 1 bit, you have 2 networks. Like here, there was nothing that was borrowed. The host ID was still 8 in number. Number of network is still 1. You can only use this to do only 1 network. Number of hosts, that's valid IP address, is still 254. That's normal default we had before. Bit pattern is still 8 in number. So if I decide to borrow 1, that's I borrow 1 bit. How many host ID are remaining? 7. How many network I'm going to have? It's going to be 2 raised to power 1 that I borrowed. Going to give me 2 networks. How many valid IP address I'm going to get is going to be 2 raised to power. How many is remaining? 7 minus 2. Going to give me 126. Now, if I borrow 2 here, that's I borrow 2. How many host ID? Host bit are remaining? 6. If I borrow 2 remaining, 6. How many network am I going to get if I borrow 2? It's going to be 2 raised to power 2 that I borrowed. It's going to give me 4. This one I borrowed 1. So each of the networks, how many valid IP address is going to be 2 raised to power. What is remaining? 6 minus 2. It's going to give me this. Then if I borrow 3, that's 3. The remaining 5 number of host IDs. How many subnets I'm going to get is 8. That means it's 2 raised to power the 3 that I borrowed. You're going to give me 8. Each of the network is going to be 2 raised to power what is remaining, which is 5 minus 2. So each of the network is going to be 30 valid IP address. The same goes for all of them. Please, we need to continue this in our next section. So our next section is purely IP subnetting, purely. But if you have time to practice what I taught,
DAC
I can't hear you again. Can you say that again, please? And I have short time.
The DHCP, the one you said DHCP, the automatic to
IP
assign
address.
IP